Get ready as MAV TV, the only network dedicated to all things motorsports, races into Canada. MAV TV offers every type of motorsports racing: automobile, off-road trucks, drag racing, world rally, sprint boats, motocross, how-to shows, garage builds, and more. From our live marquee events, grassroots racing, original series, in-depth talk shows, and news coverage with the biggest names and rising stars in motorsports today. MAV TV is motorsports, and it's racing into Canada. Visit mavtv.ca for more details.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame Induction Gala. Please welcome your Master of Ceremonies, Automotive Editor, and Motorsport Writer for the Toronto Star, and Canadian Motorsport Hall of Famer himself, Mr. Norris McDonald.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 23rd Annual Induction Ceremony, this year presented by MAV TV Canada and Lucas Oil. In addition to our new sponsors, this gala is being shown the first time on fanschoice.tv, and for those who are watching, I say welcome. Without further ado, let me welcome one of the great men of Canadian motorsport, the chairman of the board of directors of the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, Dr. Hugh Scully.
Norris, thank you very much, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ceremonies tonight. It's delightful to have you here. It's an opportunity to recognize those that have made a great contribution to motorsport in Canada in particular, and that is the reason for the evening. Right off the top, as some of you know, for health reasons, Jackie Stewart has been unable to travel. This developed 2.5 days ago. I've been on the phone with Jackie for about an hour each of the last few days. I'm happy to say that he has stabilized, and the anticipation is he'll make a full recovery, but it simply wasn't possible for him to be flying hither and thither to come and join us tonight. And he sends his regrets and his congratulations to the other inductees and his best regards to everybody in the audience. I am pleased to tell you that as a special guest and as a request, and there'll be more later, Brian Williams, who is known, I think, to everybody here very well, has graciously agreed to accept the membership to the Hall of Fame on behalf of Jackie, and I talked with Jackie about that, and he was very enthusiastic, and more about Brian later as he gets involved. It's up to me, certainly, to recognize that nothing like this happens without participation by many other people, and in particular, because he never claims credit for himself, is Sid Priddle, who is our general manager, who has put in countless hours, notwithstanding the fact that his wife Betty has recently undergone surgery and happily is doing very well. So Sid has just done an outstanding job. Norris has already mentioned MAV TV and Lucas Oil, and we certainly owe them a vote of thanks. But there are others that you wouldn't know. Joel Robinson is a producer of the evening. Michael Taylor and Rob Turner have looked after the silent auction, and as you get a chance, please bid often and bid up as you get out. Tim Miller has developed the script for the evening, and Eric Thomas has done the voiceover. Tom Dickinson, who is on the board, is the ticket manager and has stepped in and has done a great job there. The printed program, which you have, was donated by Inside Track. And of course, there's the inimitable Norris McDonald as the Master of Ceremonies. And I've said I'll have some comments more about Brian Williams in a few minutes. I think it's also important to acknowledge that you have a very hard-working, focused and dedicated board of directors. It makes my job easy. It's a privilege to be there and listen to these men who know so much more about so many other things than I do. John McGill, who couldn't be here tonight because he's traveling, is the vice chair. Paul Cook, also a member, brings that wealth of knowledge he has about racing and organization. I've mentioned Tom Dickinson. Denis Cadotte from Quebec, not able to be here tonight, is a member of the board. Ben Doctor from Calgary has been a very generous contributor to the hall and very actively interested. Ralph Lucio, being inducted tonight, is a member of the board, has done an immense amount of work in the past. Randy Packham brings a level of professionalism to the job as treasurer that we've simply not enjoyed before, and I can tell you that things are going very well compared to a few years ago. Mark Rothermel also is a member of the board and makes his contribution. And again, I come back to Sid Priddle as general manager. I think now, Norris, I would turn it over to MAV TV for a few comments. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the evening. I'll be back and speak to you later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening. On behalf of MAV TV, soon to be Canada's 24-hour motorsport network, as we prepare to race in across this country, along with Lucas Oil Products, owner of the MAV TV brand and proud sponsor of grassroots racing, I would like to say how honored we are to be part of this year's Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame ceremonies. As you will hear tonight at this year's inductees, they truly showcase the talent, passion, and dedication Canada has for motorsports, along with the influence it has had on the global racing community. Tonight, the stage is theirs again. Winners, all of them. I would like to thank the Canadian Motorsport Board of Directors, along with Mr. Sid Priddle, for having us involved in this great event. I'd like to thank fellow media, such as Racetime Radio, Inside Track, Mr. Norris McDonald, who cover the industry, this great industry, day in and day out, along with the various volunteers, event organizers, and most of all, the fans. MAV TV looks forward to being part of the Canadian motorsport landscape for showcasing the rich history this Canada has to offer, as we're here tonight to witness, along with providing a platform for the next generation of drivers, event organizers to tell their stories and give the fans access to the various great events coast to coast. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. That was Mike Garrow, by the way. I think I might have been supposed to have come out and introduced him. Somehow that was missed on my part, and I apologize. And thank you, Dr. Scully, for your opening remarks. By the way, it was Dr. Scully's birthday yesterday. He turned 35. He's just a couple of years older than I am. And one of our honored inductees is celebrating his birthday today, tomorrow, and that's Alex Tagliani. Alex is going to be 20. And today, I knew that I had this screwed up somehow, but he and Bronte's baby, Eva Rose, turned 1. So. To be inducted into the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame is a great honor, and the process for admission is rigorous. Candidates are nominated, vetted by a nomination committee, and then selected by a selection committee made up of journalists and motorsports experts from coast to coast. And this has gone on every year since 1993. More than 150 participants have been honored, racers and organizers, from speedboat racing to motorcycle racing to all the various automobile racing disciplines. Gilles Villeneuve was among the first to be inducted. Kay Peter, the first woman inducted. She was known as the Queen of the Brooklands back in the 1930s for her speed record-setting runs at the Brooklands racetrack in Britain. And Mike Duff, a motorcycle racer. Pardon me, stock car racers Ted Hogan and Jimmy Howard. Jim Howard just passed away just a few weeks ago. And then some in the audience tonight have been inducted. And I would ask them to stand and be recognized, and please hold your applause, if you will, until they've all been standing up. Speedboat racer Mark Rothermel is here in the front row. Dr. Scully. Horst Kroll. Is Horst here tonight? Yes. Stand up. That man is horsepower. Brian Stewart. Where's my good friend Brian Stewart? Paul Cook. Welcome. Bill Brack. I was just having a drink with Bill Brack before the ceremony. There he is. Epi Wietzes. There he is, lady. Hey, first Canadian Formula One race, 1967. Epi Wietzes was in a Lotus for that race. And last but not least, Ron Fellows. Actually, not last, sorry, me. There's the inductees present here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Now we have another special guest here with us tonight, a little different discipline, a man who really needs no introduction, a 3-time world figure skating champion, 2-time Olympic medalist, and 7-time Canadian figure skating champion. Please welcome to the stage for just a few moments, Elvis Stojko. Come on up.
Thank you.
So good to see you here. Figure skating, you're out there in front of millions of people. It's a solo, solitary type of pursuit. You're seriously thinking of another career that has you out there in front of millions of people and pretty much a solo, whatever I'm trying to say. Tell us a little bit about your idea of changing to motorsport.
Well, yeah, I mean, some people know that I've been racing karts and cars and getting into that realm, which all of you are so familiar with. And for me, it's been a passion since I've been a kid. I started racing and actually riding dirt bikes since I was 7 years old. Sleds, all that stuff, anything with an engine, I was on it, rebuilding it, blowing it up, doing it all over again. I was living in Mexico the last 12 years and started shifter kart racing at the same track that Sergio Perez groomed there, and as well as his brother. And was coming back to Canada and started doing the Rotax series and felt, you know what, I want to start racing cars. It's been a passion of mine. I love sports cars, and hopefully next year we'll take that next step up and be a part of that as well.
Well, that's what's going to be my next question. Sports car racing definitely on the agenda? Little single-seater racing at some point?
Well, maybe. I did some testing in some single-seaters. I did some stuff with some tin tops as well, but I think sports cars is where I'd like to go. I can't let the cat out of the bag, but we'll see.
Come on, Elvis.
Since I was a kid, I always loved to race a Porsche, but maybe one day that'll be a dream come true for me. And I'll always still skate, and however long I can, as these knees can hold me up. Instead of using my legs to get me from A to B, I can use the throttle to get me from A to B and C and D and all the way around the track.
Well, congratulations. We look forward. Who knows? A number of years from now, we might be inducting you into the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame.
Thank you.
All the best going forward.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, what is going to happen now is that I will introduce the inductee to be honored. A short video of their career and accomplishments will be shown. They will come to the stage where they will be formally inducted, and then they'll say a few words. I will ask the presenters at this time to come forward and gather over to my left, your right of the stage. and once the organization is done, we'll be able to get the actual ceremony started. Thank you. In the meantime, I will remind you of the silent auction that's going on out in the lobby. As Dr. Scully said, bid high, bid often. This, after all, is a fundraiser for the Hall of Fame. And so hopefully Michael Taylor and his gang have got some terrific gifts out there, and I hope you can take one or more home with you tonight. Our first inductee is John Chisholm, who will be represented tonight by his son, Donald Chisholm.
This inductee contributed so much to oval track racing, not just in his native Nova Scotia, but the entire country. He was a racer, he was a builder, but he was also a visionary that presented some of the best stock car racing in Canada, providing fans an opportunity to see the best in the business at a showcase facility. He was a determined racer himself who took many checkered flags in the early 1970s at tracks throughout the Maritimes. He also traveled throughout Canada to learn the unique product of auto racing from several angles. He was also the owner of Nova Racing, which fielded teams of the NASCAR Canadian Tire Series. A lover of NASCAR, he traveled to Tennessee in the mid-60s to scope out the legendary Bristol Motor Speedway and ultimately built a replica, Riverside Speedway in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. Riverside's association with NASCAR has been a lengthy one, and the track boasts the longest affiliation with that sanction than any other in Canada. He then brought Riverside up to more modern standards in 2006, and the state-of-the-art facility has continued to attract the biggest names and events. As the heart and soul of Riverside Speedway, our inductee gave the fans an opportunity to see and meet their racing heroes, men like Junior Hanley, Earl Ross, Brad Keselowski, Marcus Ambrose, and Joey Logano. Not only did he bring headline events and drivers to the Maritimes, he headed up one of the most successful construction firms in the province. His vast and diversified charitable and philanthropic ventures are renowned throughout Nova Scotia. In 2011, he was recognized for his significant contributions to Nova Scotia's economy and the Cody Institute at St. Francis Xavier University with an honorary degree from St. FX. So 48 years after dropping out of high school, he finally graduated. His large contribution to the IWK Health Center in 2013 is perhaps his most notable show of generosity. A racer through and through, this inductee has left his community and province much richer as a result of his vision and generosity. Please welcome into the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, posthumously, John Chisholm.
Is Donald Chisholm here? There you go. Come on. By the way, Donald won the Maritime Stock Car Racing Championship last weekend. About a month ago. Well, I was close. Let's have a nice round of applause for that. If you're going...
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Cecil, for the presentation. First, I want to thank the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame for recognizing Dad. It's certainly a true honor for me to be here accepting the award tonight on his behalf. And thank you to Joan Rui and Paul McLean, who unfortunately could not be here, for nominating Dad in the first place. Dad was a pretty low-key guy, not much for awards and recognition, but we're sure he'd be extremely proud and humbled by this honor if he were here with us today. A few years ago, NASCAR had some ads on TV, the How Bad Have You Got It ads. Dad would laugh out loud every time one of those ads was on. He thought those ads were written specifically for him. He knew he had it real bad. Racing was always Dad's passion. He wasn't into fishing or hockey or golf, but he was into going to Daytona when he was 16 and building a racetrack at 23. When at 22 he decided he would like to build a racetrack in his hometown, he thought who better to call than Big Bill France. So he called Daytona, got Mr. France on the phone, and proceeded to ask his advice on building racetracks. Mr. France then arranged for Dad and a company surveyor to attend a NASCAR race in Bristol, Tennessee. Although to most, bringing your surveyor to the race seems a bit unusual, the purpose was to survey the track surface after the race. With the advice of Big Bill and the data the surveyor had picked up, he went home and built a scale model of Bristol, Riverside International Speedway. He sold Riverside in 1989, but bought it back in 2005. After he owned the track the second time, he and I did some extensive traveling to some of the finest short tracks on the continent. At each track, he would take notice of what worked well and also what didn't work so well. It was those trips that helped turn the old Riverside into the new Riverside. Some of the most successful winning racers on the planet have competed at Riverside, and very often in cars owned and prepared by his own race team. Sprint Cup champions, Xfinity Series champions, Camping World Truck Series champions, V8 Supercar champions, Daytona 500 winners, Coke 600 winners, and many national and regional champions and winners. And every one of them had the same reaction to the facility. Wow, what an incredible facility, a true racer's racetrack. Over the year, Dad's motorsports resume has been extensive. A winning driver, track builder, rebuilder, owner and promoter, series organizer, car sponsor, event sponsor, and now even a championship-winning car owner. He did this while continuing to grow a very successful group of companies. Dad had always told me that one of the reasons he loved racing was that he felt many of the attributes that make you successful in racing are the same attributes that make you successful in life, business, or at anything for that matter. Hard work, determination, and the importance of a solid team behind you. He often told me he would never have accomplished what he did without an incredible team behind him. Part of his goal for building and then rebuilding Riverside Speedway was to share that obsession with as many people as he could. To be recognized for his motorsports contributions on a national level, I think we can agree he succeeded in his goal. In closing, I'd like to congratulate all the other inductees, Ralph, Alex, Tagliani, Don Thompson, and Sir Jackie Stewart. Dad is certainly being recognized amongst some fine company. Again, thank you for the honor, and thank you to the Canadian Motorsports Heritage Foundation.
Just a fine maritime family. I don't know if any of you have ever been down to Antigonish, New Glasgow area of Nova Scotia, but Riverside Speedway is just an absolute gem. And you're driving along the Trans-Canada and you got trees all over the place, and then all of a sudden here you are in Bristol, Tennessee. It's absolutely amazing. When I was naming the members of the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame earlier, as inevitably happens, I missed somebody. Roger Pert is here tonight, and I don't know where you're sitting, Roger, but it's nice to, oh, there you are back there. Congratulations, and thank you. Our next inductee is Ralph Lucio.
A racing event is comprised of competitors, fans, and of course, officials. And our next inductee has been one of those dedicated, tireless officials who has worked unselfishly to promote Canadian motorsport over the years. After moving to Toronto from his native Regina, his interest in motorsport began in rallying and hill climbing with a VW Carmen Ghia, which soon escalated into driving a Porsche. While racing on weekends, this inductee was a communication and public relations specialist for several automakers, and during his tenure with Volkswagen, became interested in Formula V racing. But he discovered there was no such car in Canada, so he borrowed an American car for an advertising campaign with VW. He took measurements and studied the Beetle-based racer, and he built one for himself, the first of its kind in Canada. After his stint as a driver, he turned his attention to the promotion of auto racing and was prominent in bringing road racing series such as Can-Am, Bulova, and Rothman's Porsche to Mosport, now known as Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. But he had even bigger things in mind. There was a need for a low-cost street stock series in the mid-70s, and through his efforts and expertise, and with the support of Honda, the Honda Michelin Series was born. Using stock Honda Civics, this series began in 1976 and ran 17 years, with more than 400 competitors racing at a variety of tracks throughout the country. While he was the heart and soul of the Honda Michelin Series, this inductee also devoted lots of time and energy to the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, and since 1994 has been a board member, hall administrator, and organizer of induction ceremony gala evenings. For 20 years, he's been behind the scenes of the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, but tonight he takes center stage. We are very proud to induct into the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, Ralph Lucio.
Thank you and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Growing up as a kid in Regina, I had no thoughts in my mind of sports cars, racing, or motorsport. Sorry. My first car was a 1928 Chrysler sedan with wooden spoke wheels, which I had to water down each night so that spokes wouldn't fall out the next day. We found our way to Toronto when my father was transferred from the Hotel Saskatchewan in Regina to the Royal York Hotel. Now, going to school in Toronto, and on one day on my way home from school, walking along the Kingsway, there was a sign in the window of the Kingsway Theatre looking for an usher. I went in, applied for the job, and got hired. While I was working at that theater, the owner turned out to be a fellow that was definitely interested in motorsports. He was building a sports car, and he said, you want to come down to the shop and see what we're doing? I went down and spent several days and evenings there with them, watching what they were doing and helping out with whatever I could. Eventually, we ended up buying a couple of Carmen Gias, which I raced and rallied. We had a lot of fun with those. And then along came my first Porsche. And we started racing Porsches, and I had a 356B Roadster as well. But the coupe is what I was racing, which you saw in the picture there on the screen. We became one of the early members of the Canadian Racing Association when we were meeting at Tommy Gilmore's house, and I'm sure some of you remember Tommy Gilmore. And that's where the CRDA was born. And we became a force in the development of motorsport in Canada. And of course, along the way, we also found time to join the British Empire Motor Club so we could participate in their events as well. Over the years, we managed to get several competitors involved, corporations involved, like Toyota Canada, and they sponsored the log registration building, which many of you have found your way into at Mosport, which was now Motorsport Park. But I'm sure many of you have spent some time lined up in that old log cabin which Toyota donated to Mosport at that time. We got General Motors to supply 30 replica Indy 500 pace cars to Mosport for, and again, Mosport, this is back when it was Mosport, for the Can-Am series, and they were used as courtesy cars by the teams. They were white with the blue stripes and were scooped up by the dealers after the event was over. And I'm sure that these special Camaros commanded very good prices when they were sold later. The teams dropped off a lot of the cars along the way at various hotels, restaurants, and some of them were at the airport. But one thing, thankfully, I didn't have to pull any out of any swimming pools. While at Volkswagen Canada, we got the okay to bring in a Formula V from the US, which I borrowed from a competitor, to see if there was any interest in the Formula V series in Canada. While we had the vehicle, we happened to take a mold off the body, took some chassis measurements, built our first car. To best of our knowledge, that was the first Formula V in Canada. It started, of course, a very, very strong and competitive series, and a number of different companies, shops in the Ontario area started building their own Formula V chassis and bodies, and as you know, the series became a very, very strong series and is still alive and well. Then in the early 70s, we joined Honda Canada Incorporated as advertising and public relations manager. And in 1976, we started the Honda BF Goodrich series with support from BFG Canada. This was the precursor to the Honda Michelin Challenge series. I was originally approached by a journalist in Quebec, Gilles Boursier, to see if we would be willing to start an autocross series. I said, no, I have no interest in autocross, but I would be interested in a single mark, showroom stock series for Honda Civics. We agreed to do that, and within a matter of months, our first car was put together, and we had the series going the following year. It took off, as you all know, and we then launched it in Ontario, then BC, and then nationally. It became a national series which the series ran for 17 years. And over the length of the series, we had approximately 400 drivers participate in the program. And something I am especially proud of, pleased of, is that none of the drivers ever experienced any serious injuries. And I can thank our suppliers like Multimatic and CSC, and the guidance of Paul Cook from the ASN, who helped us put incredibly safe cars on the track year after year. And I can tell you, a few of the drivers definitely tested the strength and the safety of those cars from time to time, as some of you may have seen. For a number of years, we found that produced the media, we had formed a team that produced the media information and final results books for the major events at Mosport. In those days, again, Mosport. Can-Am, Trans Am, Formula One races held at Mosport, now Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. We followed that up with working with Sid and Jerry Priddle on the IndyCar events in Toronto, Vancouver, and Edmonton. For a number of years. And then along the way, we also organized many of the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame induction galas, which I know some of you here tonight have attended those in the past. All in all, for a kid from Regina who had no interest in or involvement in sports cars, racing, and go-karts, we managed to find our way into the sport. Get my paper unstuck here. We got to meet and work with the greatest people at all levels of the sport and the corporations who supported us and helped create Canadian motorsport industry, especially Honda Canada, who year after year supported us in the ongoing program that saw hundreds of competitors participate in events from Shubenacadie in the east to Westwood in BC and numerous racetracks in between. Supporting these teams across Canada were sponsors and suppliers who had never before been involved in motorsport before. Many of them are still there supplying teams at various levels. None of this could have happened without the support of numerous people at all levels along the way. Dave Lambert and his team, Marcel Demers, Rob Duncan, our transporter driver and setup man at each event, and John Shirk at Honda Canada for his tech support. Basically 24/7, they were there to help and make it all work and be the success it became all those years. And most importantly, to me personally, was the incredible support of my partner and my wife, Fran Matsumoto. With all the incredible detail and supporting involved in the corporate motorsport program, she kept everything and me organized and up to date. Anyone who has ever attempted to run a series knows that the details and half of this medallion knows about what the details are involved, and half of this medallion I've received tonight certainly belongs to Fran. And thank you, Fran, for helping to make tonight happen as with all the work that you have done to support me over all these years. To be honored like this tonight is so unexpected, and to think my name will be added to the list of those already inducted. People like Bill Brack, Epi Wietzes, Bob Hanna, Dale Armstrong, Wally Branston, Barry Payton, and Ron Fellows, and my fellow inductees tonight, John Chisholm, Alex Tagliani, Don Thompson Jr., and Sir Jackie Stewart, to name a few. This is incredibly humbling and rewarding. And finally, thank you to the board and the selection committee for this honor, and to my friends and family who joined us here tonight for this once-in-a-lifetime honor for me. The kid from Regina with the 1928 Chrysler. Thank you, merci.
Ralph just said, try not to stumble. The reason I think that the show has been a little less smooth this year is because Ralph is being inducted instead of running the show. Let me tell you, he runs a tight ship, this fellow. And that, of course, is the reason that the Honda Michelin Series in particular was the clock that drove motorsport in Canada for many years. And the fact that Ralph did what he did for Canadian motorsport and other series, I received a phone call just yesterday from John Bondar, who, pardon me, has created the Canadian Touring Car Championship, and said, be sure to tell Ralph that his wisdom, his guidance has taken that series to where it is today, because he couldn't have done it just by himself. And lastly, you know, people copy this sort of thing all the time. The Nissan Micra series is a little Honda Michelin Challenge series. Started in Quebec this year. I'm on a very good authority that they're going to move into Ontario next year in a couple of races. And you watch, it'll be the Honda Michelin series all over again. So congratulations, Ralph. Our next inductee is Alex Tagliani.
There are many racers who excel in one form of the sport, but very few who excel in several branches of it at the same time. Our inductee has been prominent in a wide variety of racing series and has recorded a very successful career at some of the highest levels of North American motorsport. He has raced stock cars and trucks in several disciplines in Canada and the US, even competing in the Australian V8 Supercar series. But he is best known for his exploits in Champ Car and IndyCar racing. After an introduction to karting during a family trip to Italy when he was only 10, he knew racing was for him. He competed in karts, Formula 125 in 2000, and other series, winning numerous awards and accolades between 1987 and 1993. Then it was time to get serious, and he decided to make racing his livelihood. He raced in the Toyota Atlantic Championship in 1996, placing 7th in points with a podium finish at Trois-Rivières that earned him Rookie of the Year honors. Taking over from the late Greg Moore, he joined Forsyth Racing in 2000 and ran in the Champ Car Series until 2007, when it was absorbed by the IndyCar Series. During his 131 races with various teams and his 2004 victory at Road America, he took 5 poles and amassed 14 podiums. He then competed in the IndyCar Series, running 72 races for the next 8 seasons, highlighted with a 2009 Series Rookie of the Year award. Between 2008 and 2014, he started 70 IndyCar events. His best Indianapolis 500 finish was a 10th in 2010. But then he made history, becoming the very first Canadian driver to win the pole position for the famed Indianapolis 500, starting front row inside for the 100th running of the Brickyard Classic in 2011. In this year's 500, he placed 17th, driving for legend A.J. Foyt. But while he was competing in some of the fastest open-wheel cars at the time, he also climbed into a stock car to try yet another segment of the sport. In 2007, driving for the Jacobs Racing Team in the newly formed NASCAR Canadian Tire Series, our inductee ran a couple of races that year and got his feet wet driving a race car with a roof. The next several seasons, he drove in the NASCAR Canadian Tire Series, as well as NASCAR's nationwide, now Xfinity Series for Roger Penske. He's also competed in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, including the headlining Chevy Silverado 250 at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. He is certainly one of Canada's greatest international racing ambassadors, proudly flying the Maple Leaf. Along with mentoring young racers across Canada, he and his wife Bronte run a non-profit organization to raise awareness and help those suffering from acute allergic reactions known as anaphylaxis. We welcome TAG into the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Tagliani.
Well, first of all, thanks for being here. I want to make a quick correction, Norris. My daughter is 6 months. You scared me a bit. I was wondering where I was for the last 6 months. Actually, it's probably our fault. Bronte and I are celebrating birthday every month with cupcakes, so you got confused. But I promise when she's gonna get a year old, we're just gonna celebrate, every year. First of all, I wanna, thank the person, Nicole Lassalle, that decided to nominate me. That's my daughter, Eva Rose. And, to the Motorsport Hall of Fame for your consideration, the panel of judge. This is a big honor for me. Obviously, people that know me, they know that I don't travel with a big entourage, and there's about 30 people here from Quebec for the first time, so it's a premiere. And my mom and dad, they're not in the highlights of racing. Came a couple of times. I had to convince them to make the trip in 2011 at the Indianapolis 500 because I had a bet with my dad, and if I was on the front row, he had to make it. But it cost me a private plane to make it happen. So for my mom to be on stage here tonight, it's almost a tour de force, I can tell you that. And I really thank them for being here. It means a lot. And also to all the inductees that are here. It's a privilege to be part of your group. And to Mr. Stewart, Jackie, I wish him well. It's sad that he's not here. To make a long story short, you know, when I got this phone call, you know, I don't really race for trophies and for hardware, for fame or glamour. You know, I have the addiction of racing, and I'm doing it because I just love it. It's a joy of my life. And when I got this phone call, I started thinking, and really, the people I met in my life in racing, they are unselfish people that are willing to live their passion through me. And these people are my family, made a lot of sacrifice to allow me to be here today. Friends that you know, gave me a room to save some money on my travels when I went to racing. Sponsors to put money into my career and help me. Mechanics that have turned bolts on cars, you know, for us to do what we love. Journalists, the media that, you know, they made their mission to make this sport in our country known. And, you know, the fans out there that are always there in the rain and cheer you up. And for all these people that, you know, are sharing the same passion and they're living it through the guys that are behind the wheel, I just want to say thanks. And I'm hoping that you are all recognizing yourself out there, and you're enjoying this celebration with me. This honor is not. It's not a personal honor, it's a team honor, as everybody knows. It's in racing, there's no I in team, and this is the same. You know, and to finish on a little story, in racing, you know, you need a ton of money to go on, and I've been really privileged to call people and to try to create association with people that, you know, that I wanted to be associated with. And I was spending money on Bowers & Wilkins speakers in Las Vegas, and one day I pick up the phone and I call the owner of the company, and he's from Toronto, and I ask him to help me to go racing, and millions of dollars later, I had the chance to see him wave the green flag at the Indianapolis 500 on the Brickyard and give him a pole, and that was a huge reward. And other companies and sponsors and friends that have joined, you know, my venture, and were able to live the dream this year in the NASCAR Canadian Tire Series by making history in the world of NASCAR and lapping the entire field. So for all the others that have been part of my journey, I truly say thanks, because without one piece of the puzzle in place, the pyramid goes down. And I'm really taking this honor very seriously, and it means a lot to me. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I probably should have done the math on that birthday. Because we were in Indianapolis on Carb Day, and Tag had gone out and run a bunch of laps at 200 miles an hour and came in, and I, of course, am standing there with my recorder. And this man, we all hear about athletes being media trained. And that means when you ask them a question, they give you the stock answer. This man is the most delightful, helpful, person in all of motorsport, and in fact, probably in all of sport, because he understands the job of the journalist, and he kind of helps you along and does it for you. And by that I mean, you can ask him a question, and 15 minutes later, and he's answered all the questions of the, he's answered all the questions that you would eventually get around to answering. And so on behalf of the media in Canada, Alex, thank you very, very much. Our next inductee is Don Thompson, Jr.
He is considered one of the best oval track stock car racers in the country.
The line, Don Thompson Jr. will win.
He won numerous national titles before he retired as a driver. He continues to contribute to short track late model stock car racing, building cars for competitors in the NASCAR Canadian Tire Series, mentoring and working with some of the series drivers while serving as crew chief for the Fast Line Motorsports team. This inductee started with a street stock on the small inner oval at Cayuga Speedway in 1979. It didn't take long before he was testing the larger oval at Flamborough Speedway, and by this time he knew racing was his calling. He learned his craft during the next few years, and his race cars improved right along with his driving. By 1991, he was in the Cast Car Super Series, and he won Rookie of the Year. He won the Cast Car E-Series twice, in 1999 and 2000, and then really hit his stride, winning the Super Series title for the next 5 years in a row. From 2001 through 2005, his black Home Hardware sponsored Chevy, a very familiar sight in Victory Lane. Also at Cayuga, our inductee ran Canada's largest stock car racing event at that time, the Canada Day Shootout, held in the summer of 2002. This major event featured regular Cast Car teams against a healthy import of NASCAR, then Winston Cup headliners. As the hometown hero, he diced for the lead with NASCAR champion Matt Kenseth near the end of the race. But the tires on his Chevy were going away, and he had to settle for second behind Kenseth. When Cast Car was replaced by the NASCAR Canadian Tire Series in 2007, its first event was held at Cayuga Speedway. And yes, a familiar face was holding the checkered flag when that historic inaugural race concluded. In addition to 2 regional and 5 national titles, he sat on the pole in 19 of those Cast Car races. Between 2007 and 2011, in the NASCAR Canadian Tire Series, he started on the pole 11 times and took 7 victories. With a very successful driving career now behind him, he continues to offer his expertise, knowledge, and extremely valuable guidance to the sport. Please welcome to the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, Don Thompson, Jr.
I love that kid. The last time I said a speech, I didn't need these. Now, I need them. First of all, I would like to congratulate the other inductees. And I'm going to start my speech off by thanking my lovely wife, Teresa. She's the one that's been beside me through it all. When I had bad races, she's the one that had to listen to the moping and the whining. Usually until the next race. It would take me that long to get over it. So, hon, I love you and thank you for everything. Growing up in a small town outside of Hamilton, Pembroke, Ontario, I would never have thought I would make it this far, but ever since I can remember, all I thought about was racing. I grew up watching my dad race, and a couple times my mom. At Cayuga Speedway, you used to have to drive your car from your pits to the gas pumps to fill up your car. And my dad would let me drive the car, and I was like, hey, everyone, look at Mr. Cool Guy. I was hooked at that time. When I was 17, with help from my dad, my good friend Tom Bell, and my brothers Dennis and Dan, we built a street stock, and the rest is history. I had a couple mentors early in my career. Jack Greenhall used to own a compact late model and ran at Hugh Speedway. He built the car from scratch in his shop, then built the motor in his basement. Jack worked 7 days a week. Of course, like a lot of young guys, it wasn't long before I had Junior Hanley on my radar. Another guy who built his own cars, worked 7 days a week, had the most wickedest race cars, and beat all the other guys. I realized I need to be more like these two accomplished men. In 1991, CASCAR caught my eyes. I would like to thank Hall of Famer Tony Novotny for building such a high-profile series. Most of my success came in this series. I would like to take the time to thank some special people. These people saved my racing career. Bill Greisdale, who always supported my efforts. Morris Urquhart. Morris owned my very first CASCAR in 1991. The Reinhardts, who fielded a super late model in 1995 for me. Bill Robinson, who owned my CASCAR in 1997. And the Hackettses, who owned the very last car I drove. These great people used their own money and resources, to field race cars for me, and I can't thank you enough. Thought I would save the big guy for last, John Fitzpatrick. Most of my success was with Fitzpatrick. He provided me the guidance, the confidence, and the equipment to achieve my goals, and I am forever grateful. Special thanks to all of my sponsors over the years. Again, most of my success was under the Home Hardware banner, and I would like to thank Richard Brimblecombe, who piloted that sponsorship for 12 years. I have received so much help over the years by so many people, it would take days to thank everyone. So anyone who supported me, a big thank you. This is a team sport, and no one person does it on his own. I would like to thank the Hall of Fame committee and their staff for an unforgettable night. I am so grateful. In closing, now what? Well, I'm pretty excited to start building a new car this week. Thank you.
You know, this comparison might seem a little over the top to some people. But you know, you went to a Formula One race back in the 80s or 90s, and there was one car that for whatever reason always stuck out. And that was Ayrton Senna and the McLaren. You saw that car on the track, and it just kind of floated along. And that was the way it was with Don Thompson. You would go to a CASCAR or a NASCAR Canada race. I remember one in particular in Edmonton. You had to start way at the back, and that's a big, wide, sweeping airport circuit out there. And there are all these other cars going around, but there's one that everybody had their eye on, and that was Donnie. And that's what made him so special. So welcome to the Hall of Fame. Our next inductee is Sir Jackie Stewart.
Just shoot for the stars. If it feels right, and aim for my heart.
Everything in his life is attention to detail, but that's why he is who he is, and that's why he's so successful.
And it goes like this. Take me by the tongue and I'll know you. Kiss me till you're drunk and I'll show you all the moves like Jagger. I've got them.
You can argue until you're blue in the face about whether Fangio was better, whether Jim Clark was better. He's the greatest motor racing personality of all time.
When he's driving well, in tune with everything, he can see people in the audience, he can tell faces in the crowd.
I've got the key. Oh, so get in the car. You can ride it wherever you want. Get inside it. You want to steal.
Jackie's word is his bond, and you know that's unusual nowadays. And he's always delivered.
Take me by the tongue and I know you. Kiss me till you're drunk and I'll show you all the moves like Jagger. I've got the moves like Jagger. I've got the moves.
You get frustrated because he's so obviously right, and it was so clear that you ask yourself, well, why didn't the rest of the organisation see this?
Nobody else can see this. And it goes like this. Take me by the tongue and I know you. Kiss me till you're drunk and I'll show you all the moves like Jagger. I've got the moves.
I think Jackie was the most focused and the most business oriented. And if a sponsor wanted Jackie to work for them, they knew they were going to get value for money.
Into my eyes and I'll own you with the moves like Jagger. I've got the moves like Jagger. I've got the
Racing in Canada, our inductees scored a pole position in 1970, then registered back-to-back victories in the 1971 and 1972 Formula One Canadian Grand Prix in Tyrrell at Motorsport International Raceway, now Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. In 1971, he arrived at Motorsport as that year's world champion. He led 51 of 64 laps in a rain and fog-shortened race to take a 38-second victory over Ronnie Peterson, lapping all but two cars. It was his sixth win that season. He returned to Motorsport in 1972, and he was flawless, winning another Canadian Grand Prix with a 48-second advantage over Peter Revson. Our inductee also scored points in two other Canadian Grand Prix, with a sixth in 1968 at Mont Tremblant and a fifth at Motorsport again in 73, which turned out to be his last Formula One start. Competing in an era where Formula One drivers often raced in multiple series, he agreed to drive for the fledgling Carl Haas team in the 1971 Can-Am Championship. Behind the wheel of a somewhat tempestuous and unreliable Lola T260, he was still able to wrestle the pole away from the powerful McLaren team and drivers Denny Hume and Peter Revson in his Can-Am debut at Motorsport before a mechanical failure forced him to park it while leading. He won the next race at Mont Tremblant, Quebec, beating the two McLarens in a head-to-head battle, delivering Carl Haas's maiden Can-Am victory. The Scotsman's two triumphs that year helped him finish third overall in the point standings behind champion Revson and runner-up Hugh. After withdrawing from racing after the 1973 Formula One season finale at Watkins Glen, New York, when teammate Francois Sivert died in a horrific accident, Sir Jackie came to Canada again, this time as a broadcaster, working with ABC Sports for the Toronto Kart IndyCar races and the CBC for its Formula One telecasts with Brian Williams.
To introduce our special guest, Dr. Hugh Scully.
Norris, I'm not the special guest. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I explained earlier, Jackie was not able to be here. He sent congratulations to the other inductees and expressed regret that he couldn't be here, but was very pleased and honored to be recognized by Canada. I will say, just as a brief comment, that one of the things that people don't know about Jackie Stewart is that I've never met a driver over the many years that I've been involved who was more interested in safety. As Paul Cook recalls, he attended our first International Council Motorsport Safety meeting in Montreal in 1982 with my greatest friend in life, Sid Watkins, and Jackie and Sid and I worked together for many years thereafter. He was really dedicated to it, and very interested and innovative in his thinking. It's a great honor to just briefly introduce a man who needs no introduction, Brian Williams, who has agreed to accept the award on behalf of Jackie tonight. Brian is easily Canada's outstanding sportscaster. 8 Gemini Awards, 2 Foster Hewitt Awards. He's been the Broadcaster of the Year, Sportscaster of the Year 10 times. In many circles, he's known as Mr. Olympics. You recall that he began in 1976, and on behalf of broadcasting, sportscasting in Canada, covered 14 series of Olympics. He's covered virtually every sport. Brian, the Blue Jays need your help. Hockey, football, skiing, tennis, golf, and particularly autosport. I'll tell you that he's getting up at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning because he will host for the day the Canadian International at Woodbine. So he's worked this into his very busy schedule as a favor to us and to Jackie. Motor racing is one of his true loves. He's done lap by lap and overall commentary about Indy races in Vancouver and Toronto with Bobby Unser, and a whole series of the Canadian Formula One races in Montreal with Jackie Stewart in their exclusive booth at Pit Out. That was, talk about an informed group. And there was an absolute rule that it was to be exclusive, and Brian, you may enlarge on that a little bit as you talk. It was a great honor for Susan Watkins, Professor Watkins' wife, and my wife, Vanessa, frequently to be in the booth with them. And I was very envious because those commentators knew a lot more than we knew in race control about what was really going on in the circuit. Brian is an officer of the Order of Canada and holds honor degrees in institutions both in Canada and in the United States. But most importantly, in the context of this evening, he's a longtime colleague and good friend of Jackie Stewart. At my request and with Jackie's strong support, he's agreed to accept Sir Jackie's induction as a member into our Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame. Brian, would you please come?
Hugh, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am honored, and I have to be very honest, humbled to accept this induction on behalf of my colleague and friend, Sir Jackie Stewart. Over the years, I've introduced Muhammad Ali. I've worked with the likes of Wayne Gretzky, Marnie McBean, Donovan Bailey, and Elvis Stojko. I remember your first World Championship. We were together in Chiba Makurai, Japan. What the aforementioned iconic athletes are to boxing, hockey, the Olympics, and figure skating, ladies and gentlemen, Jackie Stewart is without question to motorsport. You saw the numbers, you saw his accomplishments in that video. I will not go through them here tonight. But I will tell you what it is like to work with Jackie Stewart, the man. When CBC acquired the rights to Formula One racing, the late Denny Harvey, head of sports, came to me and said, "You're going to do Formula One." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you will prepare and study." He said, "Would you like to work with the great Jackie Stewart?" I looked at him and I said, "Is the Pope Catholic?" "Of course I would," and I was absolutely thrilled. But I have to tell you, I was a bit intimidated working with the great Mr. Stewart. Our first assignment was the Detroit Grand Prix. Many of you will say the Detroit Grand Prix. There was a Formula One race in Detroit, and it was won by American Danny Sullivan. So we go down. This is the first time I'm working with Jackie. The race is delayed. I think it was during the race, actually, for something like 1 hour. The late Howard Cosell told me at the 1976 Olympics in Montreal, he said, "Young man, remember, the best ad-libs are both rehearsed and prepared." I can tell you that Jackie Stewart lived by that and understood that for an hour in Detroit. in a virtual soliloquy as I sat there. You saw the picture. That was from Detroit. I had a lot of hair then, dark hair. Jackie Stewart spoke with such knowledge and eloquence, none of the audience departed. They stayed with the race resumed, and Danny Sullivan, as I said, won. Now we go to Montreal, and Hugh has mentioned the booth. The booth is what we call, where we call the play-by-play. It's a little area like this. Now, I usually take, or had to take, whatever they offered me. But on the Thursday before the race, I couldn't believe it. The producer, Lawrence Kimber, says, we have to go down to the booth and see if it's good enough for Jackie. And I thought, you're kidding. What about me? I'm calling the race. He said, no, this is about Jackie. So Jackie says, no, Brian, the booth is very nice. And I said, I'm glad you like it. So he said, I have one thing, though, that I must insist on, and that is during the race, no one, including your wife, I don't care who it is allowed in the booth. So this is our first Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal. The race is underway. We go to commercial, and I turn around, and there's a man and a woman. The woman, I believe, was a princess. I'm not sure who from Europe. But as I said to them, excuse me, you'll have to leave, Jackie said, oh, Brian, I'd like you to meet Edsel Ford from the Ford Motor Company in Detroit. I said, you got to be kidding. Next year, we go to the first commercial. It's an absolutely true story. It's too good to be true, but it is true. We go to commercial, and I turn around, and here are two guys in leather and jeans, and I said, for sure, they're not presidents of some motor car company. So I said, fellas, you got to leave. Jackie said, oh, Brian, I'd like you to meet Darrell Hall and John Oates. Jackie traveled at a different level. I remember the story that Jackie was standing in an event with Queen Elizabeth, and one BBC commentator remarked, who is that Queen Elizabeth is standing next to? I will tell you that Hugh mentioned Vanessa Harwood, his wife, a great ballerina, and the late Prof. Watkins' wife, Susan, did come to the booth the next year. That was my turn, and I've always believed that I upstaged Jackie. Jackie, let me just tell you, and I'll keep this brief. Jackie was a brilliant broadcaster, and those of us that love this sport have to understand this. Jackie said to me, we are not speaking to the avid fan. Someone like my brother-in-law, John Keenan, who's here tonight, that gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch races from all over the world. We're speaking to the man or woman that watches but one race a year. We have to bring in the fans from the edge, from the periphery, if we want to grow this sport. He told me that before the first race, and he had that great ability to talk about motorsport without offending the purist, but at the same time without intimidating. And believe me, if you don't follow motorsport, it is intimidating, especially in the language and the description to those that don't follow it. Jackie understood to grow it, you bring in the entire audience. Walking down pit row with Jackie was an experience that I'll never forget. I don't care, folks, if it was Nicky Lauda or the aforementioned Ayrton Senna, maybe the best racer I ever saw. I never saw Jackie race in person, but it didn't matter who it was. I knew he was respected, but to see people like Lauda and Senna actually, doing everything but genuflecting in front of him, it was absolutely stunning. He was held in such high regard. And I'll never forget one day doing an interview with Ayrton Senna, and it was one of my early races. I got to know him later, I met him, I knew who he was, he knew who I was. But I said, I'm here to do a race, and he said, well, geez, I'm very busy, or an interview rather, and he said, I'm very busy. And I said, well, I work with Jackie Stewart. He said, you work with Jackie Stewart? I said, yes. He said, sit down. He stopped everything. We set up the cameras. I'm about to do the interview. My interview didn't start, folks, for 5 minutes, because Ayrton Senna interviewed me for the first 5 minutes on what it was like to work with Jackie Stewart. He wanted to know all about Jackie. He wanted to know what Jackie thought of his racing. He wanted to know how Jackie did broadcasting. Jackie Stewart was truly one of a kind. And in closing, I will tell you, when we walked down pit row, didn't matter if you were a mechanic, you were sweeping the floor, you were Enzo Ferrari. Jackie Stewart treated everyone the same, with respect and decency. He used to say to me, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm not very good at the accent. I remember one morning we're on the air, one afternoon, and I said to Jackie, that's a nice hat you have on. And he said, it's a bunnet. Now, you know, there's a million people watching. I'm live on television. I'm thinking to myself, what in the hell is a bunnet? And finally I said, oh, a bonnet. And he said, yes, a bunnet. Do you not understand? I said, I understand now. So you'll have to forgive me, but he used to say to me when we started a show, Brian, it's a fine day for a motor race. I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it is a fine day for Canadian motor racing that Jackie Stewart is being inducted into Canada's Motor Racing Hall of Fame. On behalf of Jackie, on behalf of Helen, and on behalf of the Stewart family, I say thank you. This is a great honor, and I know Jackie is thrilled. Thank you.
You know, about a year ago, my wife and I got home. I checked the messages on the answering machine, and for some reason, Brian Williams had left a message. And so she said, who called? And I said, Brian Williams. With this hesitation, she said, the Brian Williams? I said, yeah, the Brian Williams. She said, you better not erase that call. You can listen to the answering machine messages at my house today. Not that you will, but hi, it's Brian Williams is still there. I have one quick story about Jackie Stewart, my personal favorite story. It's after his driving career, and he was working for ABC, and they sent him to be the color guy at the Southern 500 in Darlington, South Carolina. And Wide World of Sports, which was the program that Jackie worked for, was conceived and run by a television genius, Roone Arledge, who passed away a few years ago. But he had Jackie go out into the infield, and the infield at a stock car race in the Deep South, there's Confederate flags all over the place. The men are all wearing bandanas, drinking beer. They all have their shirts off. The women are close. And Jackie Stewart's assignment was to go around from motorhome to campfire and ask one question. Do you know who Jackie Stewart is? And the answers were just hilarious. You know? Anyway, it's been a wonderful, wonderful evening. Before I introduce Dr. Scully again to say his farewells, I will remind you about the silent auction. Again, this is a fundraiser for the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, so look at the merchandise carefully and bid high, bid often, as they say. The bar is open. Matter of fact, go to the bar first, have a drink, then go to the silent auction. It's been a pleasure being your MC once again. Dr. Scully, good night.
Well, Norris, once again, you've done a wonderful job. Thank you very much. I think the applause from the audience recognizes that. And Brian, thank you very much being the special guest and accepting on behalf of Sir Jackie. I will tell you on a personal note that Brian also has a great interest in safety in motorsport, as he does in all sports, and often asks questions about what it was like to work with Jackie and Prof. Watkins. For all of the inductees tonight, congratulations. You're all very worthy recipients of the award. It was very easy when the selection committee came to the board to make the decision very quickly. And the presentations tonight, I think, add the substance to why you're here and why we welcome you as members of the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been very patient. Thank you for the time and the effort that you've made to get here. Parking in downtown Toronto on a Saturday night is a challenge. And I would encourage you to go and enjoy the bar, enjoy some of the snacks, and to enjoy the silent auction. And on behalf of the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame and the board, thank you very much for coming.